I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who'd lose herself completely for a man who couldn't even look at me the way he used to. But here I am, standing in my kitchen at 2 a.m, staring at his wedding ring on the counter, wondering if I just destroyed everything or finally set myself free. My name is Sarah. I'm 34 years old, and I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, in a house that's too big for the silence that fills it. I've been married to David for 11 years, together for 13. We have 2 beautiful children, Emma, who's 9, and Lucas, who's 7. From the outside, we're the perfect American family. White picket fence, golden retriever, minivan in the driveway. But inside these walls, I've been disappearing for so long that I barely recognize the woman in the mirror anymore. It started about 3 years ago, maybe 4. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when your husband stops seeing you as a woman and starts seeing you as just another piece of furniture in the house. David works in finance. Long hours, high stress. I get it, I really do. I stopped working when Emma was born, and I poured everything into being the perfect wife, the perfect mother. Home-cooked meals every night, house spotless, kids' homework done, his shirts pressed just the way he likes them. But somewhere along the way, he stopped touching me. Not just intimately, though that too, but in all the small ways that matter. No more hand on my lower back when we walk into a room. No more fingers brushing mine when we pass each other in the hallway. No more goodnight kisses that linger just a second longer than necessary. We became roommates who shared a bed and a mortgage and 2 kids, but nothing else. And if you're watching this, and you've felt invisible in your own home, do me a favor right now and hit that subscribe button, because you need to know you're not alone in this. This story gets darker before it gets lighter, and I need you here with me. 6 months ago, I tried to talk to him about it. I waited until the kids were asleep, poured us both a glass of wine, sat down on the couch next to him while he scrolled through his phone. I said, "David, when's the last time we really talked? When's the last time you looked at me?" He didn't even glance up from his screen, just said, "Sarah, I'm tired. Can we not do this right now?" I pressed. I asked him if he still found me attractive, if he still wanted me, if there was anything I could do differently. That's when he said it. He finally looked up, and his eyes were so cold, so distant. He said, "You don't move me anymore, Sarah. I don't know what you want me to say. We're married, we have kids, we have responsibilities. Not everything can be about feelings and romance forever. You don't move me anymore." Those 5 words shattered something inside me that I didn't know could break. I sat there, wine glass trembling in my hand, and I realized I had 2 choices. I could accept this as my life, fade into the background of my own existence, or I could remember who I used to be before I became someone's wife and someone's mother. The next morning, I joined a gym. Not one of those big corporate places, but a small studio in downtown Charlotte that offered dance fitness classes. I hadn't danced since college, when I used to go out with my girlfriends and lose myself in the music, feeling powerful and alive and beautiful. I walked into that first class wearing old yoga pants and one of David's oversized t-shirts, feeling ridiculous and out of place. But then the music started, and something woke up inside me that had been sleeping for years. The instructor's name was Marcus. He was probably 40, lean and graceful in the way that dancers are, with kind eyes and an encouraging smile. He moved through the room during class, correcting posture, offering modifications, making everyone feel seen. And God help me. When he stopped behind me and gently adjusted my shoulders, his hands warm through my shirt, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt like a woman again. I started going to class 3 times a week, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday morning. I told David it was my time for self-care, for fitness, for my mental health. He barely looked up from his laptop when I told him, just said, "That's great, honey. Good for you." The kids thought it was fun that Mommy was dancing again. Emma even asked if she could come sometime, and I promised I'd take her to one of the kid-friendly classes. But I never did, because those hours in that studio became mine and mine alone. They became the only time I felt like Sarah again. Not David's wife or Emma and Lucas's mom, just Sarah, a woman with a body that could move and bend and express everything she couldn't say out loud. And if you're still with me, if you understand what it's like to lose yourself in someone else's life, take a second right now and subscribe to this channel. Hit that bell notification because I need you to hear where this goes. I promise you, you won't see this coming. Marcus started staying after class sometimes, showing me more advanced moves, chatting about music and life and nothing important at all. He told me he'd been divorced for 5 years, had a daughter in college in Boston. He asked about my life, and I found myself opening up in ways I hadn't with anyone in years. I told him about David's coldness, about feeling invisible, about that horrible sentence that played on repeat in my mind. You don't move me anymore. He looked at me with something I hadn't seen in a man's eyes for so long. Not pity, not sympathy, but recognition. Like he saw me, really saw me, as a complete person with needs and desires and worth. He said, "Sarah, any man who can't see how incredible you are is blind. You light up this entire room when you dance. You're radiant." Radiant. When's the last time anyone called me radiant? When's the last time David even noticed I'd gotten my hair cut or was wearing a new dress? I drove home from class that day feeling dangerous, feeling powerful, feeling guilty as hell. Nothing happened. Not for weeks. But the tension built every time we were in the same room. I started dressing differently for class, wearing things that made me feel attractive instead of just practical. I started wearing makeup again, perfume, paying attention to details I'd let slide for years. David didn't notice. He never noticed. One Saturday, Marcus asked if I wanted to grab coffee after class. Just coffee, 2 friends talking, nothing wrong with that, right? I said yes before I could talk myself out of it. We went to this little cafe in the Arts District, sat outside in the October sunshine, and we talked for 3 hours, about everything, about his failed marriage and mine that was failing even if we wouldn't admit it, about dreams we'd given up on, about who we used to be before life wore us down. He walked me to my car, and when we got there, we just stood looking at each other. I knew what I wanted, I knew what he wanted, and I knew that if I let this happen, there would be no going back. He reached out and touched my face, so gently, and asked, "What do you need, Sarah? Tell me what you need." I needed to feel wanted. I needed to feel alive. I needed to remember that I was more than just a mother and a housekeeper and a ghost haunting my own life. But I couldn't say any of that. So I just stood there, frozen between everything I'd been taught to be and everything I was desperate to feel again. Then my phone rang. Emma's name on the screen. I stepped back, answered, and she asked when I was coming home because Lucas had fallen off his bike and needed a Band-Aid and was asking for Mommy. I told her 15 minutes, hung up, and looked at Marcus. He understood. He always understood. He said, "There's no pressure, Sarah, but I want you to know you deserve to be cherished. You deserve to take up space in someone's world." I drove home shaking, pulling into my driveway with my heart racing and my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. I patched up Lucas's scraped knee, made lunch, helped Emma with her art project, and did laundry while David sat in his home office on a conference call. Just another Saturday in paradise. And make sure you're subscribed to this channel because what happens next changed everything. And I need you here to help me figure out if I'm the villain or the victim in my own story. That night, after the kids were in bed, I tried again with David. I put on the black nightgown I'd bought years ago that still hung in the back of my closet with the tags on. I knocked softly on his office door. He was still working, spreadsheets open on 2 monitors, phone in his hand. He glanced up at me, barely registering what I was wearing, and said, "Hey babe, I'll be done in about an hour. Don't wait up." I stood there in that doorway, feeling more exposed and rejected than I'd ever felt in my life, and something inside me just snapped. I walked back to our bedroom, took off the nightgown, put on my regular pajamas, and made a decision. I texted Marcus. Thursday after class, yes. Yes to what, I didn't specify. But he knew. He texted back immediately. I'll be here. The guilt started before I even did anything wrong. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, kept finding myself staring at my kids and wondering what kind of person I was becoming. But every time I looked at David, scrolling through his phone with me right next to him, treating me like I was invisible, that anger would flare up again. You don't move me anymore. Fine. I'll find someone who can see me move. Thursday came. I dropped the kids at school, went to class, and my whole body was electric with anticipation and terror. Every movement felt charged. Every glance from Marcus felt like fire. When class ended and everyone else filed out, he locked the door and turned to me. We didn't speak. He crossed the studio floor, and when he reached me, he put his hands on either side of my face and kissed me like I was oxygen and he'd been drowning. And God, I kissed him back. I kissed him with 11 years of loneliness and rejection and desperate need to feel wanted again. His hands moved to my waist, my back, pulling me closer. My hands tangled in his hair. We moved together across the floor in a dance that had nothing to do with choreography and everything to do with two people who'd forgotten what it felt like to be touched with intention. He whispered my name like it was sacred. He told me I was beautiful. He made me feel like I was the only woman in the entire world. We didn't cross every line that day, but we crossed enough of them that I drove home knowing I was now officially having an emotional affair that was teetering on the edge of becoming physical. I sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes crying, before I could pull myself together enough to walk inside and pretend to be the same person who'd left that morning. For the next month, Thursday afternoons became my secret. We'd meet after class, sometimes just talking, sometimes kissing like teenagers who'd just discovered what desire felt like. He never pushed for more, and I wasn't ready to give it. I was caught between two versions of myself, the good wife and mother who followed all the rules, and this other woman who was angry and hurt and desperate to feel alive again. If you've ever been torn between who you're supposed to be and who you actually are, please subscribe to this channel. Drop a comment telling me what you would do, because I'm about to tell you about the moment everything exploded, and I still don't know if I made the right choices. David finally noticed something was different around Thanksgiving. I'd lost weight from all the dancing, started dressing better, seemed happier. Instead of being pleased, he seemed suspicious. He started asking questions about my classes, about my instructor, about why I was always on my phone. I deflected, made jokes, kept my secrets close, but I could feel the walls closing in. Then came the night Emma got sick. It was a Tuesday around 10 p.m., and she woke up with a high fever and vomiting. David was out of town on business in Chicago. I called my mother to come stay with Lucas while I took Emma to the emergency room. I sat in that ER waiting room for 4 hours, holding my little girl while she slept fitfully against my chest. And I hated myself. What was I doing? What kind of mother was I, sneaking around with another man while my children needed me to be present and whole? I looked at Emma's flushed face and thought about how disappointed she'd be if she ever knew what her mother had done. I thought about Lucas and how he still thought I hung the moon. I thought about the example I was setting, the lies I was telling, the person I was becoming. Marcus texted me around midnight. Thinking of you, hope you're okay. I stared at that text for a long time before turning off my phone without responding. Emma was fine, just a stomach bug that resolved with fluids and rest. I took her home at 3 a.m., tucked her into bed, and sat in my kitchen in the dark. That's when David called. He was drunk at some business dinner, slurring his words, and he said something that made my blood run cold. You know, Sarah, Brian's wife left him last year, took the kids, took half his money, just because she was bored and wanted to find herself, or some bullshit. I told him he was lucky she showed her true colors before she wasted more of his life. Good men don't deserve to be betrayed by the women they've provided for. I asked him why he was telling me this. He said, "No reason, just a conversation." "Why, you feeling guilty about something?" Then he laughed like it was a joke and hung up. I sat there wondering if he somehow knew, if he was testing me, or if the universe was just holding up a mirror showing me exactly who I'd become. A woman who was on the verge of betraying her family because her husband had stopped making her feel special. How pathetic was that? How cliché? How utterly predictable? Subscribe to this channel if you want to know whether I stopped or whether I burned my entire life to the ground. Because the answer isn't what you think. I stopped going to class. Cold turkey. No explanation to Marcus beyond a brief text. I can't do this anymore. Please understand. He called. He texted. He showed up at the coffee shop where we'd had that first conversation. I didn't respond. I blocked his number. I deleted everything that connected me to that version of myself who'd been brave enough to want more. I threw myself back into my marriage with desperate intensity. I cooked David's favorite meals. I initiated intimacy even when he seemed confused by it. I planned date nights that he'd cancel at the last minute for work. I tried so hard to be enough, to be what he needed, to make him see me again. It didn't work. If anything, he pulled further away. It was like my attempts to reconnect threatened something in him, made him uncomfortable. On New Year's Eve, while the kids watched the ball drop on TV with sparkling cider, I asked him what his resolution was. He said, to make partner at the firm. I asked if he had any resolutions for us, for our marriage. He looked at me like I was speaking another language. Our marriage is fine, Sarah. Why do you always need to create problems? That's when I realized the truth. David didn't want a wife. He wanted a well-managed household that didn't require his emotional participation. He wanted clean clothes and fed children and dinner on the table, and no one demanding that he actually show up as a husband. And I'd been killing myself trying to be perfect for a man who'd rather I just be invisible. I unblocked Marcus's number in February, not because I wanted to restart anything, but because I owed him an explanation, an apology for ghosting him like that. We met for coffee, same cafe, same table outside, even though it was cold, and we both wore heavy coats. I told him everything. Emma's ER trip, David's drunken call, my guilt, my fear. I told him I'd tried to fix my marriage and failed. I told him I was sorry for using him to feel better about myself. He listened to everything, then said, Sarah, you didn't use me. We connected as two people who were lonely and hurt. There's no shame in that. But I need to tell you something, and I hope you'll hear me. You're trying to fix something that your husband broke. You can't save a marriage by yourself. It takes two people who actually want to be in it. I knew he was right. I'd known it for a long time. But hearing someone else say it out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. I asked him what I should do. He said, that's not my place to answer, but I'll tell you this. You deserve to be with someone who makes space for you, who celebrates you, who can't wait to come home to you. If that's David after you two figure some things out, great. But if it's not, you need to be brave enough to choose yourself. Make sure you're subscribed, because what I'm about to tell you is the part that still keeps me up at night, the decision that changed everything. And I need you to tell me in the comments, did I do the right thing? I decided to give my marriage one last real shot, not the desperate, trying too hard version, but an honest conversation where I laid everything out. I planned it carefully, got my mother to take the kids for the weekend, made a reservation at the restaurant where David proposed to me 13 years ago, wore the dress he'd always said was his favorite. When I told him about the reservation, he sighed. Actually sighed. Said he had a lot of work to catch up on. I told him this wasn't optional, that we needed to talk about our marriage, that I needed him to show up for one evening. He agreed, but I could see the resentment in his eyes. The dinner was a disaster from the start. He was on his phone. He ordered quickly, clearly wanting to get it over with. When I tried to bring up my concerns, he cut me off. Sarah, I work 60 hours a week to give you and the kids a good life. I'm exhausted. What more do you want from me? I said, I want you to see me. I want you to touch me, like you mean it. I want to feel like I matter to you as more than just the person who manages your house." He leaned back, studied me with this cold expression I'd never seen before. "Is there someone else? Is that what this is about? Because that would explain a lot. The weight loss, the new clothes, the sudden neediness." My heart stopped. I could have lied. Maybe I should have lied. But I was so tired of pretending, so exhausted from carrying all these secrets. So I told him the truth. Not all of it, but enough. I told him I'd developed feelings for someone else, that nothing physical had happened beyond a kiss, that I'd ended it because I wanted to save our marriage. I told him it happened because I'd been lonely for years, because he'd made me feel invisible, because I'd needed to remember I was still a person outside of being his wife. He went white, then red, then stood up from the table so fast his chair fell backward. People turned to look. He leaned down, close to my face, and said in a low, shaking voice, "You are exactly who I always feared you'd become. Selfish, weak, a cheater. I've given you everything, and this is how you repay me? By running to some other man because I didn't compliment you enough, because I was too busy providing for our family?" I tried to explain, tried to make him understand that years of emotional neglect had broken something in me. But he wasn't listening. He threw cash on the table and walked out of the restaurant, leaving me sitting there alone while everyone pretended not to stare. I drove home 2 hours later to find him in our bedroom, throwing my clothes into suitcases. He told me to get out, said he didn't want me near our children until he figured out what to do, said he'd call his lawyer on Monday. I begged him to let us talk, to try counseling, to give me a chance to make this right. He looked at me with pure contempt and said, "You already made your choice, Sarah. Now live with it." I ended up at my mother's house at midnight, sobbing so hard I could barely breathe. She held me and didn't ask questions, just let me break apart in her arms. Over the next few weeks, David told his version of the story to everyone we knew. His wife had an affair, destroyed their family, couldn't be trusted. He twisted things just enough that he became the victim and I became the villain. The truth was messier than that. I wasn't innocent, but I wasn't the only one who'd broken our marriage. But David controlled the narrative, and I was too broken to fight back. Please, if you're still here with me, subscribe to this channel. I need you here for what comes next, for the choice I had to make that I'm still not sure was right. Here's where it gets complicated. David refused counseling, refused to talk, filed for divorce within a month, started fighting for full custody of the kids, painting me as an unfit mother who'd had an affair. My lawyer told me we needed to be prepared for a nasty battle. Emma and Lucas were confused and hurt, caught in the middle of their parents' war. David told them Mommy had done something very bad, had broken their family. Emma, my sweet 9-year-old, asked me if I stopped loving them. That question nearly destroyed me. Marcus reached out when he heard through the studio grapevine what was happening, offered support, offered to testify if needed that our relationship had been emotional and brief, that nothing significant had happened. Part of me wanted to lean on him, to accept his help. But another part of me knew that would only make things worse, would validate David's version where I was the cheating wife who'd abandoned her family for another man. So, I made a choice. I told Marcus, "Thank you, but I needed to handle this alone. I needed to focus on my kids and myself, not on another relationship, not on proving anything to anyone." He understood. He always understood. We said goodbye, a real goodbye this time, and I haven't seen him since. The divorce took 8 months. David tried for full custody and lost, but he got more than I wanted him to have. 50-50 split, week on week off. The judge said both parents were important in the children's lives, that my brief emotional affair didn't make me an unfit mother. David was furious. I was relieved, but heartbroken. Half time with my kids. Half time in an empty apartment, alone with my mistakes and my regrets. That was 3 months ago. Now I'm learning who I am as a divorced woman, as a part-time mother, as someone who has to live with the consequences of her choices. Emma and Lucas are adjusting, slowly. They're in therapy, processing the divorce, learning that sometimes families change shape, but love doesn't disappear. David and I are civil at exchanges, barely. He still looks at me with hatred. I look at him and feel nothing, which might be worse. Here's what I've learned. What I need you to understand: if you're in a marriage that's dying slowly, you can't fix someone else's disinterest. You can't love someone into loving you back. You can't sacrifice yourself into pieces small enough that they'll finally see you and appreciate you. Eventually, you have to choose yourself, even if that choice looks selfish to everyone else. But I also learned this. There's no such thing as a clean escape from a broken marriage, especially with kids involved. Every choice has consequences. My choice to seek emotional connection outside my marriage, even though I didn't consummate it physically, still destroyed my family. My kids are still hurt. I'm still alone. And I don't know if I made the right call or if I should have tried harder, stayed longer, suffered more quietly. That's where I am now, 3 months after my divorce was finalized. Standing in my kitchen at 2 a.m, staring at David's wedding ring that I found in a box when I was packing. I don't know why I kept it. Some kind of memorial to the people we used to be, maybe, or a reminder of what happens when 2 people stop trying. Marcus texted me last week. Just a simple, "How are you?" I haven't responded yet. Not because I don't care, but because I'm not ready. I'm learning to be alone, to be complete without needing someone else to validate my existence. It's harder than I expected, but maybe that's the point. So here's what I need from you. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because I'm going to keep telling my story. The messy, complicated, imperfect truth of what happens when a marriage dies and you have to figure out how to keep living. Drop a comment telling me, what would you have done in my place? Should I have stayed and suffered in silence? Should I have fought harder for David to see me? Should I have left before I ever crossed any lines with Marcus? Did I betray my family, or did I finally save myself? I don't have the answers. I just have questions and regrets and 2 kids who I love more than anything, who are learning that their mother is human and flawed and did something that hurt people. Some days I think I did the right thing. Other days I'm certain I destroyed the best thing I ever had because I was too weak to handle a rough patch in my marriage. But here's what keeps me up at night. What I really need you to help me figure out. David reached out 2 weeks ago, late at night, drunk like he was on that business trip. He said he missed me. Said he'd been thinking about us, about everything that happened. Said maybe we gave up too fast. Maybe we could try again, go to counseling, work through things. He said he realized too late that he'd taken me for granted, that he should have fought harder to keep me. And I don't know what to do with that. Because part of me, the part that still remembers being 21 and so in love with this man, wants to believe him. Wants to think we could fix what broke between us, that our kids could have their family back, that I could stop feeling like the villain in my own story. But another part of me remembers standing in that doorway in my black nightgown, invisible to the man I'd given everything to. Remembers his cold eyes when he said I didn't move him anymore. Remembers him throwing my clothes into suitcases and kicking me out without a second chance to explain. So what do? Do I give David another chance? Do I risk everything again for a man who's proven he can shut me out? Or do I stay in my empty apartment, rebuild my life alone, and eventually text Marcus back and see where that leads? Or do I choose some third option I haven't even thought of yet, where I'm just Sarah, learning to be enough all by myself? Subscribe to this channel and tell me in the comments, what would you do in my place? Because I have to give David an answer by this weekend, and I genuinely don't know what the right choice is. I don't even know if there is a right choice anymore, or if I'm just trying to pick which mistake I can live with better. This is where my story stands right now. Unfinished, unresolved, messy and complicated and real. And I need you here with me to figure out what happens next. So, subscribe, comment, tell me your story if you've lived through something similar. Tell me what you'd do. Tell me if I'm the villain or the victim or just a woman who got lost and is trying to find her way home, wherever home even is anymore. What would you do in my place?